Carry him. He never's going to learn how to walk. Someplace or other you have to expose him to the real world. And that's not true love. That's just taking the easy way because there's conflict at the moment. My kid, I hate you. I don't like you. You must have been adopted or something. Yeah, you're angry. I know you're angry. You have a right to be angry. But these are still the rules, and I'm going to enforce them.
Why the explosion in sexual behaviors? I read today that many younger people are far more sexually active than kids were 20 years ago. What's going on?
Well, there are many reasons. Certainly, with society becomes much more obsessed with sex, and in television and all the places, the exposure is there. The experimentation is there. There are much more outlets in terms of birth control and other less risk. There's still pressure to eliminate some of the aspects of sex education in school and exposing a child that a sexual encounter is immediately gratifying. So it feels good for the moment, but what are the long-term consequences in terms of intimacy and trust and affection and all of that? But we get pressures in society not to teach those things. And people who also get caught up with sex education per se. We even hear it in a political campaign at the moment. Kids are not interested in sex, they're interested in babies and birth and the process. We equate it with sex. But just explain to children, you know, that this is part of our normal process in terms of kids being brought into the world. Farm kids have no problem with it because they deal with birth and death all the time. City kids are so protected and they want to experiment, they want to emulate adult behavior, and we put such a high value also on how we look. The girls, the boys, you've got to be strong and muscular. Girls have to have a good figure, so we get all the eating problems in the young girls. We get all the boys with bodybuilding. We put such emphasis on appearance rather than what's really important in terms of self-confidence and self-esteem. And it's not a social appearance. It's not based on superficial things.
What's your read on the eating disorders?
Look at all the models. We stress somebody's got to be slender. Anybody who's obese or overweight, somehow there's something wrong with you. And, well, how do I view being slim? How slim do I get? And it becomes an issue. The same thing for all the boys, all the bodybuilding. If you're not masculine or strong, like somehow or other, you're defective some way. That's not true. It would be nice to have a nice build. Yeah. But does that make me a bad person or something wrong with me?
Are you saying that you think America is prejudiced against overweight people?
Oh, so much is judged based on appearance in our culture. How do we measure people in our society? By how much money they make. You know, who makes the most money? The athletes and the entertainers, not the Nobel laureates, not the teachers. We get so caught up in material things and superficial things. We see kids raised now, I've got to have. And that acquisition rather than their wants. I want certain things, but I don't need them. But our society puts such a value on accumulation of wealth, possessions, or appearance that it puts pressure on somebody to measure up to the social expectation, which is not always realistic for the long run self-esteem.
So there's a confusion in America between wants and needs. For the parents out there that aren't sure about the difference, what's the difference?
Well, it's very nice to have a big car, a nice house, completely air-conditioned, have my own television set, my own computer, all the Game Boys, everything I want. They're very nice to have. But you don't need them. And that's what we put in. They become kids. Kids in our say, I need it. When I was growing up, the label appeared inside the clothing. Not I have to go around and have the right label to, in effect, be acceptable some way. This becomes so much a part of our culture. It drives people to steal, beat up people, to steal a pair of sneakers and all of this. I've got to have the right Nike and the right swoosh on it, or somehow or other there's something wrong with me. What pressure does that put a parent on? I can't afford it. I got to get a secret Kmart or something else. But I put myself under pressure because my kid wants it.
Says he needs it.
I need it.
But maybe it's just a want. We will be back with more on tips on how to be a successful parent and the unique stresses of today's children on Medical Matters. We're back learning more about parenting. Let's talk a little bit about kids and their perception that maybe they all want to be the same with the same figure, the same weight. How's that factoring in with childhood in America today?
Well, it's very much cultural. We're so caught up with being acceptance, being part of the group. There is pressure on you if you take a stance that's different from somebody else. But to be able to learn to live with yourself, if you're free to say this is who I am and I can make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. But people, and if you're not willing to be free, you can't be creative, you can't do anything unusual. You're so caught up in being part of the group, you deny part of your own individuality.
Do you see that this trend to try and meet some standard is stronger than it was 50 years ago? I mean, how is America different where people are driven to eating disorders to retain a weight shape that maybe wasn't true at all so many years ago, but today is just overpowering? What's happening?
Well, first of all, your own media, the role of advertising and products and all of this, paying millions of dollars for a superstar to say this is what I do, and everybody wants to be part. So that need for conformity, to be part of, is part of our culture right now. You've got to drive the right car, you have to live in the right neighborhood, you have to have the right clothes, or instead of acknowledging that there's difference, the implication is something wrong with you if you don't measure up.
Wasn't that true 50 years ago?
Not as much, because we didn't have the same existential pressures coming on. We're bombarded with information we never had years ago. Kids have access to it. The whole society gets caught up. The schools are so busy competing whether they're going to be number one in the area or number two, what my grades are. The pressure has come from so many sources to meet some ideal standard. That's not real. We can't ever meet those standards. Somebody's always going to be smarter, run faster, make more money, be able to do something that I can't do. When do we deal with that? The kid's so caught up in school in terms of varsity athletics. I'm going to be a pro. Colleges screen out, and very, very few make it to the pros.
Well, you brought up a point. You know, if we take a look at playing 20 years ago, it has a different face than it does today. Today, it's all organized. The time that people spend in physical activity, it's not riding a bicycle down the street or going for a walk around the neighborhood or running through the woods and building things. Instead, it's a very highly organized activity like soccer. What's this all about, this whole trend and change? I mean, is it fear that people have in their communities that leads them to this, or what's happening?
Play is part of preparation for life. We used to play for fun. We don't play for fun anymore. It becomes organized, and you've got to win, and you've got to have the uniforms, and you have to do all of this. And we have the soccer moms and parents beating each other up and dumping on referees because you called your kid out on a close play. It's an extension of living through your child to have them achieve and to make up for some of the things you feel you didn't do, and putting pressure on your own kids around it. And then also sports were just more informal. We played in sandlots. Now, kids don't watch minor league ball anymore. They can see all the top pros on television. The aspiration comes up, always for the ideal, striving for something that'll never be part of the real world. So we get caught in that as a parents, using our kids as an extension. Things follow a normal curve. The average kid walks at 13 months, 14 months. If my kid walks at 9 months, look at my child. Look what he can do. 15 months, he passed out.
This is ego-based stuff.
That's right. The kids are extensions of ourselves. We see ourselves in terms of a kid. I'm going to provide all of these things for my kids. I'm going so crazy running him around and driving. The kid gets all of these material things and all of these organized activity. He doesn't get me. He doesn't get time with me one-on-one, except for drive from one place to the other. That's not the real world. That's not what the kid's going to face. I live inside this envelope of skin. I've got to live with me and be comfortable with me and have some sense of who I am. And if they don't learn this early, they're ill-equipped later on, and we're going to see the problems developing. What we would hope is parents recognize that some of these problems as they begin to come together, what can I do to change it?
For more Medical Matters television shows, go online to medicalmatters.tv.